On behalf of everybody at the Asian American Group, we appreciate you guys coming down this lovely Saturday afternoon. I'm sure we'd all rather be outside enjoying the 80-degree sunshine. Instead, we're in here providing a very valuable resource to the voters. Let's be honest, this is not non-election primaries involving judicial candidates for family court is not the sexiest of race. But we've been doing these endorsement interviews for about 6 years now. We recognize the fact that it's difficult for people running for the races such as the one you've selected to really get out there and get support since it is somewhat of a crapshoot with our electorate, as we've seen with respect to the family court bench in particular. So again, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedules to join us. What we're going to be doing is, for purpose of our endorsements, is we'll have another makeup day in about a week or so for those individuals that could not appear today. Then we'll be sending out our endorsements in about 2 or 3 weeks. When we send them out, we not only inform the candidates themselves, but we also send it out to our respective email lists, which is probably somewhere north of 8,000 to 10,000 across the board. We also get ad space donated to us in various Asian newspapers and periodicals, where we put on a list of individuals who we're endorsing both for the primary and then subsequently in the fall for the general. For the primary races, we always endorse 2 individuals. Obviously for the general, we narrow it down to 1 in the vast majority of cases. But we'll be getting your name out as best as possible. Historically, we've had between an 85 to 90% success rate with the candidates we've endorsed. And that seems to be a testament to individuals like yourselves who are willing to come down and meet with us and discuss your positions as best as you can. We realize it's a judicial race. You can't tell us how you vote on Roe versus Wade, but giving us a little more background on yourselves as individuals. So thank you again. Towards that end, we would like to start with, Marsha, I think you've interviewed with us once, if I'm not mistaken.
Never.
Never? Okay.
Never.
But I know the other 3. I don't think you have, Lynn, and I know, Jack, you and Rebecca have not.
Interviewed with you?
Yeah.
I have.
You have? Well, then I have no idea. I got that. I got Rebecca right out of all of those.
I know, but Jack.
Several times.
So
Yeah, you got me right.
it all blends together, and I apologize, Jack. So, but in that case, why don't we'll start with you, Jack, since I just humbled myself in front of you.
That's okay.
Please tell us maybe about 60 seconds or so, a little background on yourself and why you've selected this particular race to run in at this time.
Sure. As you folks, some of you remember, I ran in 08 against Sandy Pomerantz. She was switching seats. We ran a fair campaign. I lost by 3.5 points. I ran in 2010 for criminal civil against Ron Israel. I pretty much swept every major endorsement, RJ's son, pretty much all the unions. I lost by 3%. In 2012, I took a pass. My youngest boy had serious issues, including hospitalization for bipolar, etc. So I'm in this race to win it this time. I think I have pretty good name recognition. There's some excellent candidates in this race as well. My resume, nobody can beat my resume. Been there, done that. Part of it is because I'm old, and so part of being older is you have to pay your dues. As you folks may know, and they can comment, this was the Steve Jones seat, and Steve Jones agreed to finally resign because he was being crucified rightfully in the press. So it's an open seat. I also think I'm probably the only candidate that has had 4 judges work for them. I've trained 4 judges, 2 of whom are still sitting, Marty Hastings and Burt Brown. And so I must have done something right in my training. And also the current TPO hearing master, Amy Maston, also worked for me. I've sat in every single position in family court, every single hearing master position available. I'm not going to list them. I mean, there's like 6 of them. Also, I do criminal pro temping in Boulder City. I live in Boulder City. I love it. My fiance, by the way, I'm getting married in June.
Congratulations.
To a lovely lady who's an intensive care nurse at Spring Valley Hospital. This is her first introduction to campaigning.
So hopefully she doesn't like spending time with you.
No, actually, you know, it's interesting. I'm taking her to campaign events, and she's just amazing. And we're also helping co-raise her two grandchildren, who are 8 and 11, whose father chose drugs over parenting. I was a foster care parent of 2. I know foster care. I headed up a special needs adoption agency that was so phenomenally successful.
I remember interviewing you once now, because I remember you telling us that.
It was Aid to Adoption of Special Kids.
Yeah.
It was based in Oakland, and it was older kids, handicapped kids, biracial kids, and we finally convinced Nevada State Welfare that they could place these kids. I'm a little intolerant of a few things. I'm intolerant of people who choose drugs over their kids. Kids have a right to stability. They have a right to love. Giving up my foster kids was hugely painful. If the parents don't shape up, they need to ship out. And kids need to be freed up. And I know what the law is on grandparent rights, grandparents or extended family, and I don't know the exact statistics.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, Jack. I did ask for 90 seconds.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize.
We will get to more views as the questions go, but I need to keep things fair amongst everyone.
One quick question.
Oh.
What's the 3% by how many vote? Is that 3% represent?
Well, I had 357,000, and so I don't know what.
3%. Got it.
I
About 10,000 then.
That 2010 was a very active election, so it was
Close.
It was
Don't
close.
get much closer.
Made me stay up all night.
Rebecca, please.
Hi, it's the first time I'm doing this, so hello, and thank you guys for caring enough to do this. It's real helpful for us. My first rodeo in the political process, and I'm finding out how it's all working. Anyway, so I really appreciate the opportunity. I think this is the most valuable when we're actually getting to explain ourselves to people. I went to law school probably about 25 years ago, knowing I wanted to practice family law. Went to UC Hastings, was there when that earthquake happened, and I took my 3-year-old with me. So she accompanied me. I actually adopted one of those special needs biracial children, not from Jack's program, but in California. In any event, I went there as I obtained the Witchy grant here in Nevada. We didn't have a law school at the time, so I was able to get one of the grants that allowed me to go to law school and help defray the out-of-state expense, and I was required to practice law back here when I came back, which is something I wanted to do anyway because I'd already long ago chosen Nevada as my home. I've lived here for 27 years. So anyway, I got out of law school. Actually, before I even got out of law school, I started participating quite heavily in the family law area. I got a job with Bill Phillips. I started going to our annual family law conference before I even graduated from law school. We just had our 25th year. I've been to all but the first 2 because I hadn't heard of it yet. I was on the executive council of the family law section for 8 years that you're allowed to do that. I've spoken at, well actually if you look at my resume, I've spoken on a number of occasions on the issue of family law. I have I've been granted the distinction of Mountain State's family law super lawyer by my reputation. I've also been awarded or rated a 10 by AVO as a superb top family law lawyer. That's from, I was able to achieve that from my depth of practice and my knowledge in family law. But what I think sets me apart from my opponents is that I am a certified family law specialist, and there aren't any certified family law specialists on the bench. I believe our best family court judges are ones who've had a great deal of knowledge in family law before they sit on the family court bench. It's a distinction that's rather difficult to obtain. You have to take a mini bar exam, 3 hours, passed by 85% or better. You have to be recommended by your peers as well as by family court judges. You have to have an extensive amount of litigation experience, which I do. You have to have 5 years of 75% or more of your practice in family law. I have 21 years of 100% practice in family law. So I haven't been around as long as Jack, but I still have been around a very long time. All of it, 100% devoted to family law. And I've chosen this particular seat because I kind of suspected it might turn into an open seat, and it did.
Thanks. Marsha.
I'm licensed to practice law in California and our state. Like Rebecca, I graduated 25 years ago, and I've been practicing family law as well as business and criminal law since that time. As well as with Jack, I worked with our Division of Child and Family Services in Carson, as at Wausau and Reno, to revise the system. Our state was only getting 36% of the money that it could get from the federal government. And at that time, Governor Bill Richardson flew to our state, met with us and Olive Crest and some of the state officials because we wanted to model our program to receive more money. I sat at the foster care roundtable. At that time, it was we had a Republican governor. It was Jim Givens with Barbara Buckley, John Porter, and we brought the Secretary of Health and Human Services here to the state to figure out some of the issues that were going on. I got to testify in Carson regarding the Foster Children Bill of Rights, which I did not feel that they needed a Bill of Rights because it would not have allowed foster parents to search their rooms, which would have subjected all foster parents to their homes being forfeited. I have worked with Diane Steele, Judge Steele. We did a manual on foster care termination, parental rights with the National Foster Parent Association, and it used to be called the Nevada Law Foundation. I think it's called something else now. I sat as a board member. 60% of people who appear in family court are in pro per, and we thought that they would need a manual to work with them. I've also adopted children that no one else wanted. Usually the hospital calls me and informs me that they don't believe they would make it if they went to Child Haven. One of the children that I did adopt, he did pass away about a year ago. So I've done 40 trials, family law trials. I've done bench trials, I've done criminal trials, handled motions. I have never interviewed before your group. I have run before, but the decision is usually, I guess you would always decide beforehand, and so I didn't have the opportunity to interview with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn.
Thank you. I do appreciate the opportunity to come in and with everyone and just express my views, and I appreciate the opportunity. I am also kind of a homegrown individual. We moved here when I was so young, I don't really remember anything but Las Vegas. So I grew up here. I attended all the schools, UNLV, and I did have to go away to law school. They didn't have the law school here done by the time I graduated. They got it up and running the year I got back, so I missed it by a little bit. But I've been an attorney here for 17 years. I have practiced in various fields, but I have been a family law attorney for over a decade and have had my own firm since 2006, focusing on family law and estate planning, and spend 99% of my time in the family courthouse. That's where I do most of my work. I have a good deal of family law experience, and I do feel it is important to have family law attorneys be the family law judges. Some judges in the past have seen it, family law courthouse, as a way to get on the bench and then move over to what they call the real court, I would assume. And it's been The family law courthouse has been the one in the news lately for the bad acts and other things, and you don't hear about the good judges down there. Most of the judges down there are good. They do good work, and you don't hear about them because they're not controversial. I ran in this particular seat similar to be one of those judges you never hear of. Down there, not causing a stir, just getting the work done and helping solve the individual's problems. You know, family law is a horrible place. Families are being uprooted, torn apart, and we're there trying to help them get things organized, get back together. And we really need judges, especially for those individuals who don't have counsel to help them. We need judges who are patient, understanding, and can help them get back to some kind of normalcy.
Okay. And Lynn, you had mentioned something that dovetails with our next question, and obviously everyone will have an opportunity to answer this as well. You know, the judiciary doesn't have, well, it's not held in the highest regard by much of the public due to the recent foibles of some of its members, but also, you know, looking back at the judicial performance evaluations that happen every 2 years, that's really the only time that the public in general gets an idea as to how the judges rank amongst one another. What ideas do you have to either A, to improve the bench as a whole, to improve the public's image of the bench, or B, what ideas do you have to make the judicial performance evaluations a little more, I don't want to say scientific or accurate, but a little more accessible to give a better idea or paint a better picture of what our judiciary does for purposes of civilians who don't travel in its hallowed halls on a regular basis?
I think in order to get the public to understand, that one thing might be to get the sitting judges out and about more. I mean, they have a lot of things they do. They are busy all the time serving on family committees and everything else to improve the system already. But that's usually behind closed doors. Those committees meet, they talk to the attorneys, but they don't get out and meet the public. And there should be some more interaction as much as can be without causing conflict. And the other part of it is I'm a little concerned with the judges' review, in that the RJ is having a hard time. It's shrinking, but that judicial review is a fantastic tool for the public to be able to learn about the sitting judges. You know, the attorneys rate them, they've had the interaction with them, and to be honest, I'm right along the same lines as what comes out in that review. The experiences I've had in there with the bad judges, I've been with the bad judges, and the good judges with the good. So it's to my mind, it's a critical review. It just needs to somehow be expanded out to the public more. And with the Las Vegas Review-Journal kind of shrinking on itself, it might need to spread out to other media outlets in order to get that out to more people.
Marsha.
My philosophy would be to, there are Asian initiatives that Washington has, and there's money that you can get for a grant. Ballot Inspire brought the Secretary of, I think it's Secretary of Health and Human Services for the Asian Initiative. And each, as far as I'm concerned, each group of people within the city, because we have an urban chamber, we have an Hispanic chamber or Latin chamber, we have the Asian chamber. We have a law day that I would like to see everyone invited in, and that's usually during May. I used to participate with that with Judge Hardcastle when he sat on the bench. Also, there are panels that citizens can be appointed to within the family law system. They have the Foster Care and Adoption Committee. They also have several advisory committees that I would like to see all groups represented. I've gone to the Juvenile Justice Committee, and there's not an Asian representative on that committee at all. And I think that needs to be expanded, because we all need to be represented when we come before court. Now, Mr. Parrish and I think you got the contract that I had, but we really don't have enough Asian interpreters in the court. You have to wait. And I think we need to expand that because there are a lot of people that, all of my friends that are Filipino or Asian, they can speak several languages and we need more interpreters, and so we need to open up that process. That's the best way that I can see improving the court system and allowing all of the community to have representation and not just some parts of the community.
Rebecca.
Well, I've thought about this because I've had that question asked to me several times. What would you do to make improvements to the family court bench? And one of the biggest improvements simply would be just that more of our judges have, again, a lot of in-depth knowledge of family law before they take the bench. That's just a step up in quality right there. I'm the kind of person who volunteers. I raise my hand, pick me. I'm currently on the Outsourced Mediation Committee. I've been on that board for a number of years. I am also, we've recently started another committee. It's the Child Interview Committee, trying to figure out consistent ways between departments, because one of the problems we have in family court is the inconsistency between, amongst the 20 different judges sitting on the bench. And although family court was created with the idea of let's get some consistency going on, that really hasn't occurred, and we kind of almost have 20 different little kingdoms going on down there. And the more effort we make to promote consistency, some of that can happen by having more rules, because you have to learn which judge likes which procedure, which way they like to set their trials, which way they like to do things. And so there are committees that are working on getting rule changes. Again, I'm in the Child Interview Committee because the judges all do. Some don't interview children at all. Some interview them personally. Some send them out to mediation to get interviewed. Everybody does things differently. Providing some sense of consistency, I think, would help the public feel that the process is more fair. But again, I'm one of those people who says, hey, pick me. I've been on a number of boards and a number of things. I've been a mentor to law students. That's another problem that we have, is that because the community, about the same time that UNLV was starting to produce a lot of brand new lawyers, the community was starting to fail, and these new law students weren't being absorbed in the community and mentored. And having had to deal with a number of them, it makes the case very expensive and very difficult, because they don't have the self-confidence or the experience to be able to tell their client no, or to have any kind of control of their client's expectations, because they don't know themselves. And so I've pitched in that regard as well, as by being appointed by the Nevada Supreme Court as a TIP mentor, transitioning into practice, as well as I've mentored Boyd Law students as well. So I volunteer. I'll keep doing it.
Okay.
I believe that 5% of judges give all the rest of them bad names. And I can tell you Steve Jones was a prime example.
But he was good at his job. His personal life was bad.
Let me comment. And I believe, and when I talk to the medical pack, I believe that 5% of doctors give the other ones bad names. And my stepdad is a retired MD. So across the board, same with police officers. So I would invite you, when you study the candidates, a good judge or a good lawyer or a good citizen has a balance. Your professional life, your personal life. And if you can keep those in balance. Jones was an example where judicially he was considered good. His personal life was a train wreck. I've been doing this for almost 40 years. I have never had one disciplinary inquiry, not one inquiry. I've never had one malpractice inquiry. If I get one fee dispute every 10 years, that's unusual. I don't take or touch my client money. Those lawyers who take client money have committed a crime. They need to have their ticket pulled permanently. That being stated, I have helped a lot of lawyers. As you well know, Ben Graham started the group of lawyers who have alcohol or substance abuse. I've helped a lot of those pro bono. What I say is, if you've taken money from your clients, put it back immediately. If you have a problem with alcohol, you're undergoing a divorce, let me take you to the state bar and you voluntarily put your license on ice before they yank it. State bar is our friend, not our enemy. I've had situations, nothing that I did, but potentially situations that my client had lied to me. I didn't want to further the client's testimony that would be false or fraudulent. I used to call Rob Baer and say, Rob, I don't know what to do.
Rob Baer was former bar counsel, so the lawyer who kind of made sure the other lawyers stayed in line. He's now a judge.
And Rob would give seminars and use me as an example, because Jack calls us when he has a dilemma. So it takes balance. My life, I mean, as far as knowing what it feels to be a litigant, 13 years ago I went through a divorce. It's a difference between being a lawyer and going through the process. And so when I'm on the bench, I have empathy for people going through the process and sympathy for people. It cost, I could have bought a house for what it cost, but guess what? Maybe I got screwed. I got the animals and the kids. And I'm a great parent. And now I'm a great step-grandpa. That to me is my priority. As a result, my golf game is absolutely terrible, but I guess God meant for me to be active as a parent. I feel what the litigants are going through. It's painful. When I was running for civil criminal, they said, why are you running for civil criminal? Because I said it's easier dividing up money than it is kids. This family law stuff is hard. It's painful. But John would attest to this, when the judge starts screaming at the lawyers or litigants, it's so disrespectful, and you're getting negative results. Years ago, when John Mendoza was a judge, I worked for Tom O'Donnell, God rest him, but Mendoza used to yell at counsel, and unnecessarily. I don't yell at people. What I want them to do is feel comfortable, and at the end of the day, and I've done thousands of arbitrations and thousands of mediations, is if the litigants leave and they said, you know, the judge was fair. That's what justice is all about, that the litigants.
I always thought it was having the litigants leave and everyone be equally, pardon my French, pissed off. That's when you know you've done justice.
It's interesting you say that. May I just?
Now I'm using bad language on YouTube or whatever, but I'll get over it.
I'll calm down. But when I came to town, the judges, all the district court judges, there were 11 judges, district court judges, and they did civil, criminal, and family law. And God bless them. The judge I worked for said, I don't care about the $1 million case. The family law cases, as his clerk, get first priority. But he used to say, just as John touched on, when the parties leave and they both felt that they've been
equally disrespected. How about
these are
that?
his words.
Yeah.
These are Judge O'Donnell's words. He said, then maybe there's fairness, because that's the nature of litigation.
We've all used very colorful words to describe
I'm sorry, that's
certain things, but
that was Judge O'Donnell's words.
yeah, I'm the one who said pissed, and that was me, John Paris. I'll take it. I'll own that one. Next question, I'm going to start with Marsha. We've recently had some Supreme Court litigation regarding the appearance of impropriety with respect to individuals perhaps giving disproportionate amount or receiving disproportionate amounts of money from litigants, and how that would affect their ability to sit and render fair judgment. Assuming you are elected, what ideas do you have to minimize that ostensible appearance of impropriety in those kinds of situations?
Usually, in the past, when I started working, I worked with Barbara Buckley a lot. We used to get advisory opinions from the Attorney General's office, and when it was a questionable issue regarding how much you should take or what you should do, and if it came up consistently, we would seek an advisory opinion, and the Attorney General would tell you, well, this is what our office feels is fair and reasonable, and that way I have a guideline as to what is going on, and I would encourage. They used to do advisory opinions. I don't know under Catherine, but I know under Frankie Supapa and under Sandoval, they did advisory opinions. I've never had to do one or requested one before. That's what I would do.
Okay. Lynn?
I think avoiding the appearance of evil is a first step. I think those situations, finding a polite way to dissuade or push off any kind of things like that, it's just receiving anything, it just kind of puts the hackles up on you just because of the incidents that have been in the past. I don't think it's instances where somebody's trying to buy approval or influence or anything else, clubs or other things, giving gifts, things like that. But I don't know if there's a way to deflect that and ask permission to donate things to charity in the judge's name or something else. But just avoiding receiving anything at all is usually the best case.
Thank you. Jack?
Well, Nevada law is clear. It says the judge may not remove himself absent extraordinary circumstances. That's Nevada case law. So the judges, if they recuse, they have to meet a high standard. That being stated, for example, when I worked with Gloria Sanchez, she clerked for O'Donnell, then with the gentleman that Rebecca worked for, Bill Phillips. So I was with Judge Sanchez for a number of years, and I did her divorce. And so she recused herself for 2 years because she just wanted to make sure there was no appearance of impropriety. Rebecca and I both worked with Fran Fine. Fran is a very good friend, and it didn't make one iota of difference to Fran which litigants appeared before her. In fact, I think maybe she demanded a higher degree of preparedness. The judge I worked for, his best friend was Harry Claiborne. He ruled, or George Foley, he ruled against those guys as often as for them. And so all of us, if you've been around, my friendship circle is huge. And you know, for example, if the attorney that represented me in my divorce, I would, like Burt Brown and Marty Hastings, every case, they just make disclosure. Jack Howard, we work for Jack. Does anybody have a problem with that? Fran Fine used to do the same. I worked with Jack, do you have a problem with that? Or Gloria Sanchez, O'Malley, do you have a problem with that? You know, at the end of the day, the judge needs to leave the bench and make the right decision. Yeah, the only thing that top-end attorneys have going for them is their credibility. So the attorneys who appear before me, they may be friends, but I've had cases with them and against them, any of these people. And they tell me the sun's coming up in the east, I can bank on that. Because why? Because they've established that credibility. We all know lawyers who play fast and loose. And those lawyers' reputations precede themselves. So some lawyers, I have to make sure that I'm fully read the materials to judge their credibility. But if we all recused from everybody who was a friend.
Never get anything done.
We'd never get anything done.
Rebecca.
I have a real strong sense of ew, that's not right. And I would, anytime that there would be
Yeah.
something that would cause that to happen, I would take whatever steps I needed to do to review the judicial canons or to contact the state bar. I'm a firm believer in contacting the state bar. I've done it on numerous occasions myself, and there's been issues where that's made me take pause and go, this just doesn't seem to be cool. But otherwise, judicial canons, there's a lot of rules. It boggles my mind that people do get caught up in things where there's suggestion of, oh, money's paid off or things like that. Maybe I'm naive. I can't imagine people would do that. I certainly wouldn't be that kind of a person. I've spent years building a practice and a reputation, and don't let my clients do odd or bad things, or I'm not their lawyer very long. I certainly would be, I would believe that I absolutely would be able to draw a distinction between those lawyers that are, just the ones that we've had on the other side of the cases all the time. You can certainly be impartial with. And there are probably a small handful of attorneys where I would just simply have to say, no, I can't, because they're very, very dear, close friends.
Full disclosure.
Yeah.
Okay. We're coming close to our time limit here, but the last question where we have some interest is, obviously we have decades and decades of experience in the family law trenches sitting in front of us. What area do you think, and we'll start with Jack and rotate around to Lynn. So I guess Jack, what area needs the most improvement in the family court system? And assuming if you are elected, how do you plan to address that?
Well, that's a broad question. Like Rebecca, I served on the State Family Law Council for 8 years. We both timed out. But I gave a seminar 2 years ago on domestic violence. And so I was interfacing with the judge and the hearing master from Reno. And it was amazing to me the difference in how it's done in Reno and how it's done in Las Vegas. And in Reno, and a lot of people, TPOs are both governed by state law, and now hugely so by federal legislation such as the Gun Control Act and the Act Against Domestic Violence for Women. I mean, these are federal mandated, and it says on all these federal guidelines you have to have due process. And criminally what due process is. Family law sometimes loses sight of really what due process is. But Susan Edmondson, who's the hearing master in Reno, they allocate more than twice as much time per case. They actually call witnesses. And my goal would be to kind of look at what Reno's doing, really have some hard discussions with all the judges to make sure we conform to the federal laws. It would be my prediction, and I told this to the Supreme Court when I lectured, violation of a family court TPO is a misdemeanor. Violation of a justice court extended order is a Class C felony. Whoa, and the Supreme Court didn't even realize that. As all these, there's not a lot of case law. I mean, there's case law on if you're convicted, what impact it has on the custody, etc. But we really need to rethink it. And particularly when you're talking about peace officers and the likelihood of them losing their career, I mean, that is a significant impact, a significant due process consideration. What happens is you have a bunch of family court judges both up north and the south. and they all have their separate fiefdoms. And, you know, there needs to be thought to uniformity. And in some ways, Reno is far behind us. And the other reason is because their caseload is
Lighter.
much, much lighter. But they get it more, I think, than we do. So what change would I have? I try to get more uniformity. How do we do that? We interface with the judges up there, the Supreme Court, etc. Supreme Court does not have a per se domestic law expert. They have a lot of civil law experts and a lot of criminal law experts. But in the State Family Law Council, we had to brief for the Supreme Court some really important, probably Rivero, I'm thinking is maybe the most critical, but the family law section had to really, because the litigants, lawyers were going to screw it up, right? So Family Law Council had to, and then we had to educate. That went up twice. Supreme Court got it wrong the first time, and then they reconsidered. But there needs to be family law, the judiciary, both north and south, need to coordinate more carefully. That would be my change.
And Rebecca, you had mentioned the multiple fiefdoms and the lack of consistency across the board. It would, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that one area which you would like to improve upon,
Well, yeah.
or is
I mean,
there
I've
a
already,
different one?
you know, chatted about that, and again, being on, you know, the child interview committee, taking, I at one point was years ago, I was helping with doing an updated financial disclosure form. We now have another one that still needs, I think, a lot of work. So, you know, improving the consistency, it's just what makes litigants feel like things are fair when it isn't so wildly disparate from, you know, the same set of facts between one judge and another one.
What? Oh, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
What is the reality of that consistency as far as having a uniform guideline, even just in the South, for judges to follow, assuming that some of them don't know family law or are not as versed? What is the reality of that?
Of what? Oh, you mean
Of putting it into work, putting it in place?
Well, there's judges have their bench books. They have. I mean, I think if there were, well, we already have rules and procedures and things, and so we just.
But they do things
more.
differently.
They do, because
And
there aren't
different
rules. There aren't rules that say you must do this particular thing all the same way, like child interviews. So we're trying to establish a local rule that will say this is how you do a child interview. It must be done this way, and then all the judges would have
Is it
to.
being
Because it's
done now, or is it something you're going to
It's in
implement?
process.
In process.
It's something that's in process. Another thing I think that would improve family court is just enforcement of orders. Someone who was running for election some years ago called me up and said, well, Rebecca, what do you think, you know, family court needs to improve upon? And I said, you know, it'd be really helpful if we spend so much time and money getting orders, and then when they're violated, then you come back into court and the litigant spends an enormous amount of money and generally doesn't get a whole lot
Satisfaction.
of bang for their buck in doing that. We need judges who are willing to be judges and make a decision and to have thought behind that decision and to actually enforce their own orders. Otherwise, I mean, especially in family law, you've got one person who maybe has a lot more money than the other one. They can just needle the daylights out of the other one and torture them for a very long time. We need judges who are willing to put their foot down and say, no, the order says you will do this, you will do this. And whether it's going to be just a small, modest fine at first, and then it escalates if the behavior becomes something to say, no, you will not do that anymore. I think that would be a huge improvement too.
Marsha.
One thing I would like to do would be, Reno gets a lot of the federal funds in their court system in reference to the TPOs. When I was on the Nevada Law Foundation, the money comes in and they get most of the money. I would like to see it fair across the board so that some of the things that you're asking for, we would have the resources down here to actually implement. The other thing I would like to see is the organization that you did your 8 years. We need something like the DAs have. They have their own association that goes up and lobbies the legislators. Family court attorneys need to have that type of group as well, so that we can get some uniform laws passed. Because I try to explain, if you get clients and you go to different courts, this client got this result, that client got that result, and they're usually very unhappy with you. So that would be one of the things that I would like to do, bring together a group of attorneys and try to speak with legislators and try to get them to give us a uniform code of family law. That's what's important to me. Thank you.
Why? Why
Please go.
is Reno get most of the fun?
Because they make the decisions.
They hardly have anybody live up there.
The infamous
It's been that
north-south
way for
divide.
years.
Yeah.
Population
It's been
wise,
that
a
way
whole
for
lot
years.
less.
Yeah.
Yes.
May I interject something with your permission?
Very briefly.
Please.
It, I don't think any of us are saying that the judges are out of control or there's no uniformity. There is basic predictability and uniformity. So I'm not suggesting that none of the judges are on the same page. I'm saying that they should get more on the same page.
And get more guidance so that we don't have to suffer as lawyers.
Or as
Or
litigants,
litigants.
heaven forbid.
That's the word.
Yeah. Lynn.
One thing I would like to do is find a way to improve the time that a case takes, especially for those parties that don't have counsel, the pro se litigants. They come in, they have their world falling apart around them to start off with, and they still have to comply with all the same rules and regulations that the attorneys have to deal with. So if there's some way that that can be aided and abetted, that's not the right word to use, but nonetheless, that they can receive some training from, just expand the programs from the university, law school, to give them the training on how to approach their case. They're already fighting over the children, over the pensions, over the house and everything else. And they come in and maybe one judge is a little louder than another, or they're brusque, something else, and it tends to really beat down, especially on the pro se litigants. They have to be able to, I spoke earlier, the good judges down there are the ones that you never hear of. Those are the ones that you come out and you feel like you've been treated fair. Even if you lost, you feel like you at least were able to make your statement. They were pleasant. They may have probably explained what it is you did that was incorrect or how you could improve it. They took just a little bit of extra time to hear the litigants and what they needed to do. And they were treated fair. Getting them there and helping them be prepared for their experiences in court is really where we need to help increase. That's the biggest burden I think a court has, is just the sheer volume of people that are in there, especially without counsel.
Perfect. Well, again, we're right at a little bit over our time frame, but that's okay. They don't know what we're doing in here. Again, I wanted to extend our appreciation for you guys coming out today.
Thank you.